Hi, I'm Pete Atkins, and I'm sitting here with Clive Barker and Ashley Laurence. I'm going to act as a kind of moderator. I'll try and stay out of the way as they discuss a movie they made nearly 15 years ago.
Good God.
Clive Barker's Hellraiser. Well, Clive, it is 15 years. Any initial thoughts before we start watching the movie? What are you expecting to feel?
I'm clammy pond with anticipation of total failure. No, we were talking before we began, just saying that time is sort of forgiving. There you are, Ashley.
Being introduced.
Yes, introduced. That time is sort of forgiving in a sense. A couple of years after we saw this movie, we probably didn't like it at all. I saw it again reasonably recently and thought it was a movie of its period, which worked actually pretty well.
Good.
And I have, and Ashley, you must go to this because you were so much a part of this too. I have the most wonderful memories of doing it.
Yes.
And I think in a way that's almost as important as what we're watching right now, is just the memory of doing it.
No, it definitely symbolizes an entire time in my life.
Yeah.
It's like a family dog.
Yeah.
Kind of. It becomes much more than the actual entity.
I remember standing outside the studio where we were doing the re-recording of the stuff with Ashley. I was not living in Los Angeles then, and the sun was shining, and everything felt I thought, this is as good as it gets. I've made this movie. I don't know what it's like yet. I had this lovely lady we were having a charming time. We were actually doing pretty well, and the sun was shining, and it was L.A., and I thought, well, this is why I wanted to get into the movies.
Take it. It's yours.
This scene was done on a set, which if you had panned to left or right from that shot, you would have seen naked wall. It was such a small set. Most of this stuff was done just as within the...
In a bathroom.
Yeah, an incredibly small...
Right, I mean, it was, you had a small studio at Cricklewood and a location house in...
Dollis Hill, North London. And the studio, you say a studio, it was essentially a village hall.
Right.
You remember?
A single stage.
It was a single stage.
Yeah.
That and a little family of people doing this for what was under $1 million at that time. A very small, loyal group of people.
Yeah, and we're looking at some nice Robin Vidgeon horror movie lighting here now.
Yes.
He's so defined.
Right, and I mean, that was the thing, Clive, in terms of commercial movie making, this was your first feature as a director, not your first as a writer, but your first as a director. How important was it to you to have seasoned pros like Robin and Dickie Martin around you?
I was surrounded by, look at that, that's pretty grisly.
I like the pore marks.
Yeah,
That was really good.
Grisly. I had Dickie Martin, who edited for Schlesinger and for David Lean, Robin Vidgeon, who'd done a host of extraordinary pictures, and I had Bob Keane and his team, the special effects guys, who had come off Aliens and Highlander and a bunch of other movies. And I think they were all drawn to this because we were doing something which was for the British film industry at that time, and I suppose it's worth saying we made this in Britain. Pretty rare. It was a very intense horror movie.
Well, it's certainly a very intense opening that we're watching here, for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember, although obviously we'd worked together in theatre many years before this, and I was later to become involved with the Hellraiser series, I saw this movie, despite visiting the set, I saw it for the first time as a viewer. And I remember seeing this opening sequence and thinking, Jesus Christ, is it all going to be this intense? What the hell are they thinking?
Well, the lessons come from people like Cronenberg. I remember vividly seeing Scanners, which has that exploding head very early on in the movie, and which is one of those scenes which tames the audience. I think horror movie audiences, even now, still need to be tamed in a way early on with something that really delivers something intense, and the audience says, "Okay, we're in the hands of somebody who really wants to scare us. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt."
And then you buy the next 40 minutes of exposition in effect by giving them.
It may not be as much as 40 minutes. It may be only 20, but I certainly think, and this is for me as a viewer as well, I think you need to know, I mean, the beginning of Jaws, the death of the girl in Jaws, or the opening of the Cronenberg picture of Scanners, movies which have these intense, shocking things going on very early on, which we've just moved past that passage in this movie, and now we're into, as you say, exposition, and we're going to watch 10 minutes of exposition, perhaps more, before we actually get to something more horrific. And we're going to do some setting up of story. And hopefully the audience is ready for that story because they've been tamed by what preceded
Sure.
it.
Now, had you learned that lesson when you wrote the script, or did you change the sequence when you shot it, or did you change it when you edited it, or did you write that stuff in from the get-go?
I think it's part of storytelling generally. I think probably as a short story writer, and I'd written by this point 3 books of short stories and a novel. I think I knew that I needed to deliver some thrills and spills early on in the narrative in order to gain the attention of the reader. So I don't think it's an issue which is just pertinent to movie making. I think it's about storytelling generally.
It all goes.
I thought half of it was your brother's.
I've never known him to kick cash out of bed. Besides, he's probably behind bars someplace. You know? We have to let Kirsty see this place before we do a thing to it.
I never liked this scene. This was pure exposition. I never liked it as I was shooting it. It was one of those scenes where we were shooting it and I was thinking and that was very early on in the shoot. And I remember thinking, I'm screwing this up. I shouldn't be, I really shouldn't be doing this.
I've got a terrific job. You're back on your own turf.
We pretty much shot in order, though.
We pretty much shot in order, which is
I know.
why the early parts are a little weaker, I think, than the later parts.
It's kind of a luxury, though,
Yes.
to be able to do that.
Well, it was for me, and I suppose for you too, because you were a
Absolutely.
fledgling too.
Yes.
Was this the first movie you made?
Yes.
Yes.
My first anything.
Your first anything. Andy came into it with hugely more experience than anybody else on that side of the camera. Claire Higgins, who was playing opposite him, had great theatre experience but very little cinema experience. And he was occasionally difficult. I think he would be the first to admit it. And I didn't help that by being indecisive on occasion, not really knowing quite what I was doing. He was making a huge act of faith. He was flying over to England. Here he was making this movie with somebody who'd never directed a picture before. And he was putting himself in the middle of this thing. And I think sometimes he got anxious about that. And I think sometimes I didn't do, oh Lord, sometimes I didn't do all that I could have done to reassure. You know, I think the thing that people very often miss in the directing chores, you are at very least, 50% of the time, you're a diplomat. Please come into this, Ashley, because that's a
Well,
part
I'm
of
nodding, which you can't hear.
it. It's okay. Oh.
No, I think you're forced to mediate with interrelated between the actors with what you want in the scene. I was talking to Pete before about how great it is in a positive sense to be manipulated by a director, not in like a bad relationship way, but in the way where you know what you want and you know the person well enough to know what to stimulate in them to get
Right.
the response that you need. And that's really lovely.
This is an interesting scene because we had this girl, and I think she was a professional lady, if you understand. And she came up and she shot these these stills with Sean Chapman, which were to be these stills of Frank with a prostitute that Julia is now going through. And I remember every single member of the crew trying to get into a tiny, tiny room to see these things
yeah.
being shot. Actually, I don't think I was even there when they were being shot, but everybody else was.
Call me tomorrow.
What is nice is that we're sort of setting up a number of storylines at the same time here. It's a relatively sophisticated narrative. You know, we're watching dad and daughter
Which
on
is
the
also
one
kind
hand.
of twisted as she's watching
Her own
postcards
sexual
with-
thing,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
See, I didn't recognize all that stuff because I was so young, and now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's what he was doing. You know?
Well, it's a family saga.
It really is.
It is a family saga. It's just a very twisted kind.
So,
Isn't it interesting? One of the things which shows its period is the hairdo.
Oh, the hair.
The
Isn't it?
hair.
It's always the way, isn't it? But I think again, that's the 2-year gap versus the 10-year gap you were
Yes.
talking about. It's like 60s fashions looked terrible in the late 70s. Now
Yes.
they look cool again, and
Yeah, but I look like
80s
the lead
fashion looks
singer of
bad. You know.
Dawkins.
Now we're about to get a little walk-on by, on the left of the screen here, Oliver Parker, who played with Pete and I in a number of theatrical productions, and more recently has become a director himself. There he is leaning on the mattress. He directed the Othello with Larry Fishburne, and more recently An Ideal Husband with Rupert Everett. Great pal. From way back we did theatre stuff. How long have we known Oliver?
20 years.
20 years.
In fact, Ollie, as
It was
as
an
I said on
audible
the
sigh.
as I said on the Hellbound disc, Ollie was in fact my replacement in Dog Company.
That's right.
Dog Company was such a collective that I was involved in auditioning my own replacement, which was the first time I met Ollie, and that was 1980.
This was a scene that was added at the behest of Tony Randall, who directed number 2, who came in to look at the picture late on and said, you know, we need to open this picture up just a little bit. And remember, we did this on a Sunday morning.
I liked that.
Yeah, it was very nice, and Tony had a nice architectural sense, and I think it was he who pointed this shot out to me that we could do this. We required an extra probably 10 or 15 grand to shoot that day, and Tony got it for us. It was great. You know, as we added a little bit of money, and it wasn't a lot of money, but as we added a little money, it did help open the picture up now and
Sure.
then. This is one of those, I guess, symbolic scenes, right? They've thrown all the saints on the old lady's saints out onto the
Right.
onto the walkway outside the house, which is going to allow hell access into the
Right.
house.
oh, great.
This is a big house.
You like?
You know, it's very interesting. I can see this, and the lady sitting to my right now, Ashley Laurence, hasn't changed a bit in the intervening 15 years. It's uncanny. You have...
Well, of course, she was only 10 when you shot this,
that's right.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Exactly. But this is a house. I mean, we should point this out. There's no set here. This is all, the geography of it is exactly as you see it. And I think we knocked one wall down, perhaps.
With permission or without?
Yeah, no, with permission. I think the house was for sale, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
because someone had supposedly gassed themselves. Do you remember hearing that? They
No,
had
I
put the gas on in the garage, and they killed themselves in their
Is that
own
true?
car.
Really?
I don't know. That's what that's what
Wow.
I heard.
Can I come in?
This is a sequence I like.
Can I come in?
There's something quite nice about this past and present interwoven. Julia's memory of first encountering Frank as he returns, the younger Julia encountering the younger Frank, and their burgeoning relationship intercut with the cuckolded husband hauling the marital mattress up the
Yes.
stairs and about, obviously, to spill blood. It's a scene I like.
Of course.
Here's the past. It's Julia's memory of encountering Frank home from Hong Kong, where he's been conquering whores. Now she's remembering him.
And Frank is Sean Chapman?
Frank is Sean Chapman, but not Sean Chapman's voice.
Right.
An American voice.
There's one in the bathroom.
So she slides the photograph away out of view. She doesn't want to have any conversation with Kirsty because she wants to really remember in solitude her encounter with Frank.
Julia?
She goes upstairs into the attic where obviously a lot of this stuff is going to take place. Nice shot from David Barron there, who was our cameraman. This again, all in the house. None of this shot on set. But then we step into a set. Am I
This-
right, Ashley? Is this?
No, this was
This
still
is
in
the house.
house.
This was the house still.
Yep.
This was the house still.
This was still the house. No, this was right above the stairway.
Yes, you're
And you
right.
make a
You're
right,
exactly
yeah.
right. You're exactly right.
But you did in fact build a
We
replica
re-
for Frank to come back up from the floorboards.
That's
was it.
right. We
So you could go
reconstructed
underneath.
this house, this room rather. Just this room.
Hmm.
Wedded bliss?
And now we're back into memory again.
You're gonna let me kiss the bride?
What is also very potent in all of this, pulling it all together, is Christopher Young's score,
Yeah.
which is tremendous and lush and large, much enhanced the movie immensely.
What about Larry?
This is just shot beautifully.
Yes, Robin Vigeon. Well, Robin Vigeon loved to shoot women.
Yeah.
I mean, he just loved to
Yeah.
shoot women. He really did. He loved that.
Didn't you have to do this twice too? Because it was so hot.
We did, yes. Yeah. We did a scene, we did a version of this which had some spanking in it. And the MPAA was not very appreciative of that. And Lord knows where the spanking footage is.
Someone has it.
Somebody has it somewhere.
It's on the internet, I'm
Right,
sure.
right. But they had said, and this is the honest truth, they actually couple on the bed in a little while. The MPAA told me that I was allowed 2 consecutive buttock thrusts from Frank, but a third would be deemed obscene.
Oh, so 2 is all right.
2 was okay.
Because obviously
Consecutively 2. You're
Yeah.
allowed that, but
2 is all it takes the MPAA members
I would
to
think
come,
by
I
and
guess.
large. And then, and then what's very perverse and fun about this is here's the moving of the mattress, and here's the nail, and here's the fucking. So we're
Right.
backing and forthing between the fucking
The
and
nailing.
the
Well,
nail.
the nailing and the
Exactly.
nailing.
Yeah, you were there before me, the nailing and the nail. Right, exactly.
But actually, I mean, what's nice as well is the third element of the intercut, which is Claire's face when she's remembering this. And as you say before, it's a family saga.
Yeah.
And
Everybody's in this.
right.
It's never enough.
And that's a nice shot. That's a very nice shot. I know people who've, slowed that down to see how much genital detail there actually is in it.
Please.
Yes, it's a nice interweaving, and there's a lot of plot elements
Absolutely.
revealed in all of that.
And character and theme as well, because it is this her longing for this lost passion.
Right.
It unleashes a lot of nasty stuff.
Well, literally now we're
Right.
watching the blood
Him
is
bleeding.
begin the unleashing.
Right.
It is what cinema can do, not uniquely, but cinema is very good at this kind of marriage of elements, the past and the present.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see.
she's also like his mother.
She
there,
is, isn't
not
she?
his lover, and that's
Yeah, she is. Well, that's how my mother is when I bleed. Just don't look at it. Just don't look at it.
denial is good.
Denial is good.
Yeah.
And then this is where
may
we
be
actually
related.
oh, for sure. This was very simple. This was just wringing blood to come up through the nail holes, and then the filming it in reverse. And this is where we had the fake room,
Right.
because we moved below the floor. There's a little plastic bag there which was being inflated, I think, probably by Bob Keane's breath.
Right.
Happened. It's just an accident. He's all right. Look, will you drive? He needs stitches.
Yeah, sure.
The keys are in the kitchen.
And now, of course, we're back in the regular house again. And there's a lot of value to be had, particularly in a low-budget movie, from real geography, from a real place. I think we got a lot of qualities, atmospheric qualities.
Absolutely. It really did become kind of laden with the
Yeah,
whole experience day
yeah.
after day.
Yeah, and then, it got very cold. It was November. There was one toilet. We all knew each other very well by the end of it.
Intimate group of people.
Now, tell me again, Ashley, are we back on the set again now?
I think with the rebirth stuff, well, see, this looks like set to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yes, this is set for sure, because this is where, that's right, this is all set. And this is where Chris Young's score, which becomes large and rhetorical, and it's almost like a waltz score, isn't it? Just tremendous. And all the gloop and those rats, those poor rats.
Sweet little rats.
Who would do absolutely nothing but look at us sweetly.
I know, they're so domesticated.
Yes, absolutely right. Now, all of this was a later edition.
Now, the sequence is later edition,
Yes.
or you'd shot it once
No.
and reshot?
It was all a later edition. What had happened in the original draft was that because I knew we didn't have money for a sequence as elaborate as this, we'd seen the blood drop onto the floor. We'd seen it disappear into the floor. We didn't have that shot moving below the floorboards. And what had happened, I guess, was that later on, Julia had come up and found Frank, and we had to put the pieces of the narrative together. When New World saw the movie, they liked the movie. They said, there's good stuff here. We can spend a little more money on it. And I think the whole thing was, $25,000 or something. But Bob Keane was exceptionally good. He gave us a wonderful deal on the creation of this piece of special effects because it was something he'd always wanted to do. And it's a wonderful piece of effects. I mean, it's very much of its period. I suppose now you do it all by CGI. I'm not convinced it would necessarily be better done that way.
I love how
No.
lymphy it all is.
How what it is?
Lymphy.
Ugh, yeah.
No, I think you're right, Clive, particularly with this kind of effect, because plastic or flesh, there's still a physical reality
Physical
that isn't...
reality, yes. I don't know how the movie would have played without that sequence, actually, because if you think of that sequence being out, what would have happened in the version that I wrote without the enhancement was that we would have had Larry being taken off to hospital with a bleeding hand, then we would have cut to this party scene. It would have been nowhere near as effective.
You would, in effect, not have the bomb under the table.
You wouldn't have had the bomb under the
The
table.
audience knows there's something up in the attic, and these guys don't yet.
And everything that follows on, this is a much more powerful scene in its sort of simple way because there's something disgusting upstairs.
Right.
Okay, stop. I'm not going to be able to stand up.
So lie down.
Mr. Nelson, who's standing or sitting rather to the left of Claire there, has passed away since we made this movie. He was one of the first, there he is, one of the first, I guess we would know him from Boys in the Band. He was extraordinary in Boys in the Band. A very nice man, very sweet man.
You have to come to us next.
Yeah, real soon. I'm glad you're back.
But now all of this stuff is charged up with the idea that
Something's waiting.
something's waiting
Nasty.
upstairs. Yes, exactly. Claire looks wonderful, I think.
She does.
Claire was an interesting. He is an interesting
Yeah, don't talk about
person.
her like she's
Was.
past tense.
Yeah, really. He is a very interesting person because she has so many of her own demons,
Oh, only when I drink.
right?
Yes.
And the demons were something that she accessed, as it were. For
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Yes.
Generous
Can you
actress.
talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get along very well during filming because of that. I think we both kind of embodied what each of the characters went through, and so we didn't speak very much, and she was rather scary, and she did show a real dark element in her performance that was organic. And that's why she's so talented.
Catholic upbringing, I think, and had a dark history, which she freely brought
She was
to.
brave.
She was
Brave.
freely brought to this. And again, a great act of faith shown in us. I mean, or perhaps most particularly in me. I mean, I was this fledgling guy who was goofily saying, gee, I want to scare the hell out of America or whatever else. And she was giving her heart to this thing.
But you were thoughtful about it and passionate about it.
I was
and
passionate
were in the
about it,
trenches with us.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any one person going through something alone.
No. Well, I believed in it. Oh, God. I'd forgotten that shot.
The happy rats eating their oatmeal.
Yes. Was it oatmeal?
Thank God.
Yeah.
No, but I think that is very interesting, Clive, that like your enthusiasm for a genre to which actors are not necessarily drawn or interested. Like Ashley, I know, is not interested in horror movies or likes them. My guess is Claire wasn't. But your passion for the material, your belief in the material can win the actor over to bring a seriousness.
But each character is very human, too. So
Right.
it's what they're going through. It's not scary to be scary. You have a reason for every single thing that's done here.
Mm-hmm.
Help me.
There are a couple of cheap boos in this movie, but there aren't a lot of them. And actually, that was a complaint from New World quite regularly. Though it wasn't opportunist enough, it didn't really deliver enough of those little jumps. It was a time when movies were very jumpy. A Nightmare on Elm Street had come out,
Sure.
which was a very effective boom machine. Halloween had been very successful at making people jump. This movie, I don't think makes people jump. I think it disturbs people.
Oh, it's insidious.
Right, and boos and jumps do not date well. The audience's eye gets faster at
Expect it.
reading those things, and the disturbing nature of this movie will last longer than if you'd blasted it with things jumping out of cupboards.
Yeah, I think the S&M element of it, which we'll get to is
Sure.
when Pinhead and the gang appear, is also one of the things which gives it some power. This was before people had really before that, piercing and S&M had become almost hip. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't write your own influence in the fact that it became hip out of the issue. I mean, I'm sure there were other elements too, but I think...
Yes, I think
Hellraiser helped popularize the notion of damaging your body for fashion.
there were Hellraiser nights here in
Sure.
LA. Certainly, Cinematic used to have Hellraiser nights. There are a lot of people who come along to signings with really wonderfully elaborate Hellraiser tattoos and so on.
You have to heal me.
That's a nice gothic shot.
I've always loved that one.
Yeah, she looks great.
And she's in white.
Yes, but her eyes are so tremendously. Look at you, you're all innocence, and
Giant
she's...
Cocker Spaniel.
What?
You look like a giant Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, I don't think I'm even going to remark on that. Yes, a nice closure and all of that.
Uh-huh.
This is supposed to be America, of course, and there's a nice English train going by.
Well, I mean, but to be fair to you, it wasn't supposed to be American when you shot it.
No.
There was redubbing.
There was redubbing because they had discovered that they thought the movie had some life in America and that it wasn't going to work if it was perceived as a British picture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much truth there is in that, in hindsight. Perhaps there was some truth in that. What do you think?
I don't know. We live in a decade now where they subtitle Ken Loach movies.
That's
So
true. It's completely
So
true.
maybe they're right. Maybe it would have...
Yes.
I beg your pardon.
Hey, we're not all frigid.
Actually, could you just lay a couple of Hellraiser myths to rest? The Tramp, the Guardian of the Box we just passed,
He's not me.
is not you, and it's not Alan Moore, the famous comic book writer.
No,
either,
it
right?
would have been
Okay.
wonderful if it had been Alan. I like this shot. But
It's great.
yeah, the one where we pull out from the lovers there, and then we crossfade to here's the nascent love affair. It's not going to last that long, but
Do they
and then
ever?
you go to the two, to what marriage really is.
God.
Somebody lying, snoring and farting on one side of the bed while the other one has a good smoke and curses the moment they ever got married.
And their bed looks like a cage.
Right, exactly. And he probably knew that. And then remembers that moment of pure love when and here's the reality. Here's what Frank has become. Cinema can do those things. To go from the Sean Chapman was a very attractive man, and now we're asked to believe that this is what he's become. And here's Julia, who's fresh from a masturbatory memory.
Well, she looks
of,
the most open, the most innocent in the whole film right here.
right, and she's about to say, "I will commit murder for you," and all she gets is a kind of little thankful grin of gratitude from him. I like that moment when all the
Lights
goes.
go out.
Yeah. A dream sequence. This dream sequence really, as much as anything, because I love Argento movies and I wanted a moment of pure Argento surrealism. It never came off quite the way I wanted it to, but because we didn't have long to shoot it.
No,
am I right?
we had to wrap. This was like a 1 or 2 take thing.
Right.
And
You look great there, Ashley. Your eyes are great. The
This was
makeup
one
is
of my
great.
favorite scenes.
Yes.
But everyone was wearing masks because of the
Feathers.
feathers and the smoke, and then you were all telling me it was fine.
Lying. Is that what you're saying? Lying?
It can't hurt you. We're wearing masks. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's a
but
great sequence.
you described what was going on for me because we didn't have any of that.
No, we didn't have the puppets. We
you
didn't
were
have anything,
describing
did
the
we?
baby crying. You were
Yeah.
describing what I was seeing.
Kirsty? Kirsty? Kirsty! You all right?
Yeah.
When they made Lord of Illusions, somebody was remarking upon the curse of having to act opposite things that don't exist. Famke Janssen, who's in the movie, she said there were large sequences where she was playing opposite illusion. It must be very, very hard. I've done very little acting, and on screen, just Mick Garris has asked me to do a couple of things on occasion, and I've done them, and it's been great fun. But I get so nervous. How do you get nervous?
I get nervous if I don't believe in the project or I feel like there's incompetence around.
Right.
If I feel safe, no. And a lot of times I like it when something's not in front of me because whatever I can drum up in my own imagination, I know what I'm going to respond to. Or how you were, and giving me a visual, giving me metaphor, giving me things I can relate to and respond to immediately.
Right.
But you knew that.
Right. This is a nice moment, I think, coming up off a man returning to his bed, and there's the thing.
He looks almost sweet there, too.
Yeah, like a baby, like a little boy. And now another of my favorite sequences, because the story starts to really catch some momentum. You know, Mother's going out to work.
And she's in black now. She's the Black Widow. It's, one reviewer called this, Ibsen with gore, or
Yeah.
Chekhov with gore, or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And certainly that's true because of the family saga. But
Strindberg, I think it was Strindberg.
Oh,
with
well,
gore.
much classier.
Yeah.
But the moment where she walks out of the house dressed like that, and I use the term as a compliment, we moved to high Gothic.
Yes, completely.
It's the metaphor now
The
overtakes.
femme fatale.
Why not?
Even her hair is sort of done. I like this. This was a great thing because there's a long dialogue here, and we got it in one shot. We just moved towards them, and they played it, and it's very strong. And the reason why we got it in one shot was because of the way the house was constructed. None of these walls were movable, so I couldn't get overs. And I couldn't get singles on these people because there was nowhere to go with the camera. So I did it in one slow tracking on them. Got ahead of the game incredibly because we got the whole sequence in a very fast. and it had a wonderful reality to it. Very little light, just that backlighting through the vestibule there. Two performers who knew exactly what they were doing. No coverage. I think we probably had 2 takes of it. You know, this was probably the second take, and that was it.
And performers who know what they're doing is the single greatest aid to a director,
Performers
right?
and know what they're doing and care about the project, have learned their lines, and don't trip over the furniture.
Right.
That's not my line, that's no coward, but... And it's quite a long sequence here, you know. I mean, we've been watching this for a while, and it's all in one.
And on a low budget particularly,
It's a gift. We were ahead of the game.
Right.
And it, you know, I'm sure I boarded it so that there would be overs and singles. So we ended up doing it all in one shot as opposed to perhaps 5. And we were ahead of the game and maybe made back a little bit of lost time on the picture.
So, what's going on?
Now, I don't want to lose the nice narrative flow you're giving through the whole movie, but it was your first time as a director of the feature, and you saw that what you just did was a better way to do, maybe pragmatic, but a better way to do the sequence. How much learning were you doing on set? Like, would you have known that was a better way to do it until you were thrown in the deep end?
At the end of the day, I'm not sure I think it's all pragmatism. You know, in this room we have an actress. We have, I should say actor, that's better, an actor. We have writers. I paint, we make movies. Chris, who's taping this over there, is a screenwriter. A lot of arts practiced in this room, and I think that one of the common elements surely is that you very often pragmatism is what it comes down to. It's not how's it best done, it's I have to have it done by Monday.
Right.
And that's the simple truth of it, you know.
It's the simple truth, and occasionally when you stop worrying because you got to get it done by Monday, pragmatism gives you the best version.
Very often gives you the best version.
Because you don't think too much.
You don't overthink it.
Loveliest woman I've ever seen. Oh, Christ.
What's wrong?
I love that he's wearing black socks.
I love that he's vulnerable.
Yes.
I love that he's there in his underwear and she's about to hammer his brains out.
Yep.
And it's an inversion of all the things we were watching. There's Gothic, if ever there was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was cut by the MPAA.
Again, a count of strokes being the issue? Or?
Yes.
They're really into that.
And I never put it back because, you know, it was stronger and nastier without the material. There's probably 2.5 shots gone, and I think she hit him an extra time. I think there was a close-up. I know there was a close-up of a hammer on the head.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point I had the choice to put it back in again, and, you know, it was better and it was more violent the way they had demanded that I do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is nice, coming down off her as she's gasping, looking at the monster coming in and the body twitching like that.
And then the door closing.
And then the door closes.
Yeah.
A lot of closed doors. Small house. And here we're into a piece of something that is going to play as domestic farce, because he has she's just committed murder in the family house. She's got to get the blood off her. When's the hubby going to be home? That's a great shot. Her eyes are so wonderful there. She puts me in mind of Charlotte Rampling in that shot.
Yeah, right. And there she is dressed in blood and black lace, like a Mario Bava title.
Yes. This is nice because now we're into the effects, and they're all physical effects, of course. There's nothing CGI here. This is all physical.
Well, literally, CGI hardly existed when this movie was made,
I think
right?
didn't exist. Well, I
don't know.
May not have existed at all.
I know none of us owned computers when the movie was made.
Right. This is beautiful, I think. An actor called Oliver Smith in this makeup, the thinnest man we could find, with obviously several layers of makeup on top of him so that he still looks skeletal even with those layers of makeup. And I was very fond, and Pete, this goes back to things that we had looked at when we were kids together, or at least adolescents. Titian did a series of etchings for a book of anatomy for an anatomist called Vesalius. And you'll recall how obsessed I was with those images.
I recall being a flayed man for you.
I mean, I flayed you and put you in a much cruder version.
in a tiny movie we made.
Exactly. And now here comes the domestic comedy because Daddy's home, you know.
Right.
And when we just trot on the corpse and look, he's just arrived, whistling. This is, I think, sort of way Hitchcockian, because we suddenly have this transference of affections. We don't want her to get caught, do we? She's just committed murder. This is Norman Bates taking the body of Marion Crane in the car and dropping it into the swamp and then finding the damn thing won't sink.
Right. And it's a very fine trick because equally, if we're nice audience members, we also don't lose sympathy for Larry. We absolutely are on Julia's side,
right,
without making Larry the enemy.
Yeah, and the modulation, the true modulation, I think, is in the performance.
Right.
I mean, I'd love to lay claim to it myself, but I think really it's in what Claire does and what Andy does. Claire is giving us something very vulnerable at the same time as giving us somebody who has just committed the most graphic murder. Andy is sort of dumb, and it's easy to not like him too much right now. And we had that conversation at the time. I said, don't be too sympathetic here, because if you are, we're going to have a real problem at this moment. The audience can't like him too much. This is nice now. The husband's downstairs having a drink, and she is doing the most risky thing she can possibly do. She's going back upstairs because she needs to see him again.
She's in love.
She's absolutely in love.
Her version of love.
Yeah, well,
everybody's version is weird.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not again. To heal me completely.
That really is a nice sculpt job, though, isn't it?
Isn't it beautiful?
Look at that skin. Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful? And Oliver, who smoked constantly.
That drip of slime from his chin as they're speaking.
Oh, yeah. He would sit there smoking and the makeup would go on.
Just a moment.
Just a moment, she says.
Put on some music, will you, babe?
Yeah, sure.
It's like those wonderful pictures you see on the set of Frankenstein, or Bride of Frankenstein, of Karloff with the cup of tea and the cigarette.
Yes, yeah. He would sit there smoking with his his full Vesalius makeup on. But what I liked about those Vesalius etchings was that they were so elegant and so classical. And I think that one of the things that Bob Keane and his team achieved was a kind of perverse beauty in what Frank is. He's grotesque, of course, and as you say, Ashley, he's dripping all kinds of disgusting
Lymphy
gunk. But there's also a beauty in it.
Well,
and
his
an elegance,
insides are
for sure.
exposed.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm new here. You're going to have to wait.
Yeah, I think because he moves and he articulates, and I think, like you said, the Vesalius pictures, he didn't do them as cadavers. He didn't do them as corpses. They looked like, this is what we'd look like if we didn't have
They
skin.
were leaning on pillars,
right,
and almost conversational. Remember this scene we had to shoot in 2 hours too, do you remember?
Yes.
And it was very early in the morning. We turned up and...
The night before had been a particularly nasty shoot.
Had we done something disgusting or shot something disgusting, or just we were just tired?
I think it was just a high anxiety.
Okay. And then we had all those darn things.
Now, when you cast him, were you clear about those? Like, how do you feel about crickets kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I was pretty honest with everybody about the nudity, the violence, and the crickets.
The maggots were a surprise, though. The maggots were a surprise.
They were, I take that back. I don't think I was entirely honest about that.
Well, no, you we had a maggot wrangler.
We did.
Yes, and you walked up to me very quietly and you said, Ash, I want you to see something. And you put your hands in this vat of maggots to show me that they wouldn't hurt, and then got me to put my hand in the vat of maggots. And the maggot wrangler told me they wouldn't hurt me because I was still alive. And that was the day that all the investors in their three-piece suits came to watch.
You know what I do remember also is the noise they made, because they kept them in the fridge. Ooh, yeah, that little
Well, they put,
sawdust in there.
yeah, so it's the rustling.
They stank. I like this actor's look a
Yeah.
lot. Another of those simple sort of, yeah.
I like to be careful.
I think we did a version without his underwear on as well, which they decided they wouldn't use. But he was a very brave actor, and he said, "Oh, we should just be doing this naked." And her hair, of course, looks even more fabulous. She's
getting
more-
better.
Right.
She looks more like Cameron Diaz by the moment.
As drawn by Patrick Nagel.
Right.
Or Elsa Lanchester.
Or
I mean,
Elsa
the hair
Lanchester.
gets bigger as she comes
Yes,
in.
I was thinking of something about Mary. But
No.
yes. And she's taking pleasure in it. And she's taking pleasure in the darkness of it. Here's where I was inspired by watching Oliver smoke while he was in makeup. I said, I watched him doing that one day, and I said,
Right.
wow, we should just do that. We should put you in a shirt, and we should just let you
I can taste that.
behave as though there's nothing. And this is a great sort of surreal image.
Mm-hmm.
You promised me.
The Lady and the Beast.
Right.
He's sexy, though.
Really?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the box comes up, because we haven't talked about the box.
Well, right. There's this whole mythology you invented, which was to spin off into the other movies. And
Though not,
Rel-
of course, designed to spin off.
Right,
into
exactly.
anything.
Relatively, obviously not unimportant in this movie, but not the thrust of the movie.
Not at all.
Backstory.
Yes.
These guys are backstory.
Yes.
Pain and pleasure, indivisible.
These shots of Sean Chapman upside down were shot when we were testing the cameras.
Really?
And we decided to see if we could get away with something we would be able to use in the movie. We hung him upside down, we poured blood all over him, and the poor man puked like a dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he suffered. This was the first, and we swung him around. And this was before principal photography had begun. It was the Friday before we began shooting on the Monday. And he was so brave, and I thought, we really have a great guy here who's just willing to step up to the plate.
They won't get me back.
This I love, this sort of strange romance of the decayed man, or the semi-resurrected
right.
man, and his lady love talking in the shadowy attic.
Boom, boom's got him now. Boom, boom's got him. Carolina has him knocked down again. Back to Nicholas Corner. I thought this kind of
Andy and I talked a lot about the fact that Larry had a lot of repressed violence in him. That's why I think it was Andy's idea that they'd be watching boxing. That Larry was the kind of guy who would like to watch this, because in actual fact there was a lot of anger in him, not least towards his brother. He just never got to.
An excuse to yell or
Yes,
something.
exactly.
Throwing the TV guide at the set.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What was that?
And now this is Hitchcockian as well, isn't it? This is the something upstairs. She knows what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The audience doesn't really want him to find it, or do they? I mean, do they want the?
Well, they simultaneously want and don't want, which is where the tension comes from, right?
It's just that I hate the thunder.
I'm here. You're safe.
And then she uses, paradoxically, as an excuse to distract him, sex. And she feels sexually, I think, absolutely nothing
Repulsed,
for him.
I think,
Yes.
which makes it so painful to watch.
Yeah. And so she's using her wiles to distract him from discovering that her own lover is upstairs. I mean, this is where it gets into the area Webster would have perhaps
Right.
explored.
Webster or the comedians, because it would also be, my lover's hiding in the closet, so I'll flirt with
This
my
is
husband.
Brian Rick's territory.
Yeah, right,
This
exactly.
we should explain to American listeners, Brian Rick's the great farceur of the 50s and 60s in England, who was famous for creating situations in which that most common of English experience is embarrassment was used as a sort of cornerstone. Now we're fully expecting him to be jumped. This is a Boo moment that doesn't deliver, consciously, I suppose.
Nothing to be afraid of.
Mechanical rats.
Well, delivers by not delivering, I think. It's not that there's not a satisfying payoff to that
Right.
scene. It delivers by not delivering the expected.
And now while we are waiting, now what we're asking is, if the monster isn't upstairs in the attic, then where is it? The door is open to the, and now we see.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to see these two in bed together, and she's anxious, and he doesn't care because all he's concerned with is getting his rocks off.
Oh, he's a starving man here.
You're good. That's right, he is. He's a starving man, isn't he? We get the monster's POV through the lattice of the closet, and she's still watching, anxiously afraid of what the heck's going to happen. I mean, she's got her husband and her lover in the same room at the same time. If things were going well, they'd all just...
Yeah, right.
I don't need to finish that for you.
No. No, please don't. No, please. I can't bear it, please.
And again, the dialogue has double meaning.
Yeah.
She's saying, "Don't, I can't bear it." She's terribly afraid of what he's going to do. And then he does something sort of symbolic. This is what I'm going to do to your husband.
It's such a heavy flop, too.
Yeah, it is. As a rat owner, I now own rats. I don't know
You
whether
do?
Yes.
You know, I did for years.
Yes,
Yes,
that's right.
they're beautiful.
Yeah, no, we have 5 rats, and
They're like little dogs, aren't they?
they're the sweetest things. I don't know whether I'd want to play that scene any longer. I think I've become a wuss.
You're all over me, and the next.
And he's
Well,
so humiliating.
you should reassure the viewers it wasn't a real rat.
No, fake rats.
Not only that it was a fake rat, but that we actually had to take the mechanical rat
and
to the
prove.
BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, to prove that it indeed had a mechanism in it and that made it twitch.
I don't know.
This was another of those scenes which we did in an hour. We did this in an hour because we turned up to do it, and the Chinese restaurant where we were shooting it, which was in Hampstead, there was some miscommunication. We arrived, and the fellow
was
who
in
was
use.
letting us in, do you remember, wasn't there, and we
Yeah.
waited outside or for perhaps 2 hours waiting to find him to let us in. By the time we got in, everybody got their makeup on. We had time for a wide shot and
Like one take each.
one take each.
Yeah.
And of course, you can never do anything about that. It is what it is. But it was one of those scenes which always frustrated me. It's informational, and because it's informational, you want to do something that's a little bit more stylish so that it doesn't come across as informational.
I know, it makes me tap my foot, too.
Yeah. But there was nothing to do. I mean, I had a nice circular movement set up, but couldn't do it.
Somebody to talk to.
You can't love him.
You know I don't.
That's a great shot like that.
So where's the harm?
I said
Now
no.
she's in red.
Red.
Right.
Somebody else before they come looking.
So she's the same color as he is.
And she's very into this now.
She's completely found her moment, hasn't she? I love this when she lets him in and then she looks back. He's not so sure.
When
he's
her
not
mouth
so
gets all
sure.
tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just looks at wonderfully cinematic face. I didn't see it, but I was told she was an amazing Cleopatra
Oh, I could imagine that.
at the National Theatre. I think she played it more than once, but that she was extraordinarily seductive and sensual and sexy and dangerous.
Everybody does.
Waiting in the wings. This is the set again, I think. Am I right, Ashley?
I think so, yes.
Coming.
Because I seem to remember we got a top shot out of this when we had to climb up.
A game? Jesus Christ!
The gleaming.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ! Help me!
I like that this victim is kind of pissed off about the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a scene for some reason I found incredibly difficult to stage, and I agonized over it. I remember Robin Vigeon being really useful in talking me through the whole thing. And then when you get up there and there's a little fight with him, it all became much easier. I don't know what it was, whether the actor, the victim, was having a difficult day. I don't know what it was. I just remember it being one of those days when I really felt my amateur status was showing. Also, when you had all that makeup on an actor and it took 3 or 4 hours to get into an actor into makeup, it would take a toll on everybody's energies and temper. Interestingly, Pinhead, who everybody would think of as being sort of Mr. Hellraiser,
Is hardly in this one.
has hardly appeared, has he?
But it's the way he's appeared.
Yes.
It's so majestic.
Yeah. But it's definitely been, I think, a case of less is more in this narrative, at least.
Mm-hmm.
This is about a bunch of human beings and how they manage to misuse one another emotionally. And the demoniacal stuff is simply an addition, you know.
We had to reshoot that. for
We
some
did,
reason.
didn't we?
Yes.
Can you remember why?
We
That's great.
saw into the room, or there was something.
It was a technical thing.
In fact, yeah.
I sucked.
No, I was going to say it was a technical rather than an acting thing. Like,
We had actually remarkably little in the way of technical problems. I mean, there's the top shot I was talking about before.
right, so that's a
Where we
set.
go, it was definitely a set, because if that had been the real room, we would not have
Couldn't
been
have
able to
done it.
get so high.
Mhm.
Don't touch me, or so help me!
What'll you do? What can you do?
This part came easily. I remember it was just the earlier murder. It was murder.
You make your daddy so proud, don't you?
Here's another place that was cut by the MPAA when you stick your hand, Ashley,
his belly.
into his belly, and was actually much better in the shortened version than I left it that way. It was actually much more believable.
Sweet.
There. You can see how there will be reason to have slightly more at the head of that shot.
Right.
You gave Oliver such a hiding. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
bruised and beaten.
Well, I used to play third base, and so we had one shot to throw this out the window.
Right. Because of
We couldn't replace a window.
That's right. But there was also this sense that you were that when physically challenged, you were an actress that one had to be a little careful of.
Yeah.
But that's great. I mean, not just for Ashley as the actor, but Kirsty as the character. It's like, plainly, the ingenue is freaked out by her first encounter with a monster, but she's not reduced to a gibbering wreck.
Which was
She hollers, she swings at him, she...
she kicks him in the balls.
Right.
Right. That was your idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we meet the nuns, And I fought for the nuns.
It was hailing that day.
It was a cold
It
day.
was so cold, and they swept me down.
Right.
And it was so cold.
It was so cold. And then and they said, but we'll barely see the nuns. And I said, yes, but the French critics will get it. She's being passed by 2 nuns, you know. I remember you really not liking this sequence when we saw the picture again together for some reason. Do you recall that?
Oh,
Ash?
vanity, I'm sure.
Oh, okay. There you
Because
go.
I quite like it now.
I think it's good, actually.
Yeah, it's really... Well, also, it was so unpleasant for me to shoot.
Yes. This is nice. The flower on the television.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Emerging to signify her coming back to consciousness.
And also in a way like you see in school when they show those films about evolving and everything's done in slow motion.
And then we only realize that where the flower comes from when we go to the wide and we realize that it's there on the television or when I think there it is.
You're awake. In a different color.
Yeah.
Good girl.
What happened?
I'll get the doctor.
Wait a minute. How did I get here?
I like her kind of dominatrix belt.
Yeah.
Never noticed that.
Nurses can do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't conscious.
Yeah.
Please get back into bed.
I have to call my father.
That's easily arranged, but first, back into bed.
It's important. It really is.
First things first. We'll get your telephone after we've talked.
What about this? Ring any bells? You were hanging on to it like grim death.
This is where the box and all its significance starts to play in the movie. I mean, up until now, it's been pretty much a movie about a bunch of human beings.
Right.
I mean, it has
Absolutely.
supernatural
Growing up,
elements,
yeah.
but the supernatural elements haven't been hugely significant. Now, I suppose we're in the third act of the movie.
Right.
We've just begun the third act of the movie. We move into a supernatural realm. Literally, a door is about to open into hell, and our comprehension of the kind of narrative that we've been watching is going to change. And that's sort of interesting. She touches the thing, the television starts to go on the blink.
I don't notice.
You don't notice. She starts to solve the problem with the box.
Well, it's a very seductive box, too.
It's beautiful. Simon says that one of Bob Keene's designers designed it, and it really
is
was
bright.
lovely. And it served well over the periods of the various movies. It's appeared
Sure.
in lots of... I like that shot, too.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
This was fun because it did something particularly tricky when it goes back down.
Right.
Oh.
My grandfather used to bring back from the East, he was a ship's cook, puzzles of various kinds, and that box definitely belongs from that period of my life, was those little puzzle boxes that he would bring. There is an error visible somewhere in this sequence, somebody told me. One of the special effects boys can be seen at the end.
Somebody told me that if you freeze frame.
If you freeze frame it, he's visible at the end of the corridor. This is one of those moments where we really are, it's all smoke and mirrors, because this was a tiny corridor.
There was nowhere to run.
There was nowhere to run. It ran 15 feet maybe?
Maximum, and the creature was 7 of it.
Yes, exactly. And behind the creature, when we eventually get to him, was a huge gang of not unsizable special effects guys.
Pushing.
Wheeling the port. Right.
Wheeling like hell. And of course, no CGI to take out any of that detailing. It all had to be done with the removal. The only way it could be removed.
Basically, it was running in place, and then we would all have to turn around and run the 2 feet back.
Right. So the camera is moving down the same length of corridor again and again.
And over and over and over again, exactly.
And here he is.
And here's the engineer. This sequence appears in a Verhoeven picture, yes?
Basic
Basic
Instinct.
Basic Instinct,
Yeah.
that's right, yes. That I like.
Yeah.
That has a strange, it's a weird quality to it. And of course it's a little guy mounted on
Right.
on a sort of some kind of podium on wheels there. The set was very unstable. And it was a big beast, wasn't it? It was a
Yeah,
big
he was
thing.
large.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you having me bounce up and down a lot so my hair would move so it looked like I was going more quickly.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
That's pure illusion. Pure illusion.
And obviously there's technical tricks you use to convey that illusion, but also the telling of the story and the emotional investment we made in Kirsty and the rest of the characters also lets the illusion work. We're ready for that door to be opened because we've gone on the journey with her.
Well, I think that's got a lot more to do with it, to be perfectly honest, than any great
Right.
technical sophistication. I mean, that's one of the places where I really think you see the absence of money in the picture.
Yeah, that's true, but strength of imagination will always conquer paucity of resources,
Right.
and not vice versa, as we
Right.
see from
Yes.
very expensive movies that shall be nameless.
Yes. This was another of those sequences. I was sick as a dog shooting all of this stuff. Physically sick. I was going out into the
This was the last shot
toilets
of the
and
night.
puking. Yeah, but the whole sequence.
Yeah.
And then for some reason I had the flu or something, and I was just sick. And then poor Nick Vince, who was pasted into that, glued into that makeup. Do you remember?
Yes.
And I could not get out of it because that was the only way we could
Well,
pull
he
the
took
illusion
off some of the skin on my upper palate when he put his fingers
Oh,
in my
my
mouth because he
Lord.
couldn't see my mouth very well.
Right.
And we did like 7 takes of this for technical things. I remember we had to
Yes.
keep stopping.
Yes. Did we reshoot this?
No.
We didn't?
No, they actually wanted to do the sound over, and you said no because you wanted to retain the original energy of the scene.
rawness
Yeah.
of it. I remember being very aware that this was, we either sold the guys,
Here.
effectively here, and it was genuinely powerful, or it just would never work.
Right.
And I got very self-conscious. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I got very self-conscious about the fact that they all looked ludicrous. There was this guy with pins in his head, and when Doug walked on stage, I would love to be able to say that I went, oh my God, that's a revelation. I didn't. I thought, this is a screw-up, Barker. People are going to laugh. And I think you're always walking that line.
Sure, and plainly history has proven that you walked on the right side of it because nobody laughed at these guys. They,
No.
particularly Pinhead, became iconic. And now you made a very interesting decision then. This is their first major appearance and you bathe them in light. You don't
Yeah.
keep them in the shadows.
Yeah.
There's that very unsettling over neon look,
Yeah.
which interesting choice.
Well,
And-
I think Robin Vidgen had some very plain views about this, which he and I disagreed about them. Robin was very much of the old-fashioned less is more tradition view, and I think maybe Robin's opinion very much was that you showed less, and my opinion was that these were cool creatures, and we'd spend all this money on the designs, so you may as well see them. This is my cousin, by the way, the
When he
female
masturbates her
Cenobite.
throat.
Yes, exactly.
She'll tell him everything.
I definitely had second thoughts about it when I saw it. It may be one of the reasons why I spent so much time in the toilet puking. I was so anxious
because
about
you thought he might have been right.
I thought he might very well have been right.
I'm sure it could have worked the other way, but there's something very nightmarish about that white light.
Well, it's part of it is it's not what you expect, right?
Right.
And also then we intercut with this darkened house, and where the final portions of the drama are being played out between Frank, Julia, and Larry.
Well, you also expose the Cenobites. I mean,
Yeah.
and they're nasty.
And they're nasty. They are nasty.
Yeah. So there's
they're very graphic.
when they're when they are exposed, they're just worse.
Yes.
It's best you see for yourself. I left her here safe and sound. I even locked the door.
Well, she's not here now.
You've said before, Clive, if you don't have the right guys under the latex, that stuff isn't going to work anyway. And again, as with the characters who don't play in prosthetics, you got believable performances.
Performance, and
This was one take too.
This was.
Yeah.
And this was late at night, do you remember?
Yes.
Everybody was so weary.
And you know what she did right before the scene? She petted me right before she walked inside to begin the scene.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Just to give you a
Yeah, and she
trip?
sang a little song or something. It was just, yeah.
Oh, to really creep
Very
you out?
antagonistic, uh-huh.
How
It was
great.
beautiful.
That's a lovely shot. And then she remembers. Oh no, she doesn't remember. She's
No,
doing
this
it,
is
but
real.
she's doing it with her lover in
Frank
her
and
husband's
Larry's
skin.
Mm-hmm.
When I first auditioned for you, I remember you were like on your way back to London, and you said,
Yes.
okay, it was a cold reading because you guys couldn't find who you were looking for, and you said, okay, your uncle is in your father's skin, and he's trying to have sex with you and kill you, not in that order. I was like, oh God.
Tell that story of how we found one another.
Oh, I was in a teenage drama workshop with someone who was PAing, I think, in the office over at New World.
Right.
And she had said, I know someone who would be right for this. And you were like, no.
Right.
And she was like, no, we're not even friends. She's just this girl in my workshop. And they called me and said, go there now. And
You went to the offices.
I went to
we
the
did it at the
You were
offices.
on your way to the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer Tilly came up to me at Universal, and I'd auditioned Jennifer Tilly for this role. Can you imagine? It's a very different movie.
It's okay. I was so afraid that something happened to you.
We auditioned an awful lot of people. And you know what you did? That you did two things in that very small room. You screamed your lungs out and you wept.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, we have, and you know,
I
here,
weep a lot.
there you see, there it is almost. I mean, you were completely willing
Well,
to
that
do
was
that.
the one take thing. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
But look at them. I mean, look at who I was working with.
Yes.
I
They are the
I
Macbeths.
couldn't go
aren't
wrong.
they? Yeah. They are the Macbeths.
It's finished with now.
You also didn't care about looking messy and
No,
dirty and.
I like it better. We
Yeah.
talked about that. You were
Yeah.
like, I don't want one of those douche commercial heroines. I want you grimy.
Did
and
you
I was
say
like,
douche commercial? You did, didn't you? Yes,
I did.
Yeah. I like that. That's a defining moment.
but I am grimy and sweaty and
Completely.
When I'm feeling better, I'll go to the police and try to make them understand. God knows.
I'd liked immensely what Dario had done to Jessica Harper in Suspiria, where Jessica ends up looking incredibly messy and wet, and you know, she's the rainstorm, and even from the beginning of that movie, she looks completely sort of beaten up.
I don't believe this.
Believe it.
Look, you see, Claire's even playing
She's
with
petting
you
with me
there.
there.
Even there, I don't think I had ever seen that before. She's just messing with you.
oh yeah.
Show her.
There was a tradition in, for instance, the Friday the 13th movies that the boys and the girls looked very perfect.
Yeah. And see, he didn't touch me like a daddy should either.
No, he does this thing with the eye too, which he invented on the spot.
Oh, when he slorshes it around?
Yeah, and we said, what are we going to do? We said, well, just put a noise on it. Let's listen. Little moist thing going on there. The moist thing of just fixing the skin. Ah, man. Those are the moments which make it so much worthwhile when you invent something. Now we are really in sort of Greek tragedy territory. Here is the skin body
Of my father.
of your father, and the demons are about to sort of do a deal with you. This is a great shot of Doug.
Well, Clive, I know you've spoken about Doug 1,000 times in print and on tape, but just in case there's some newcomers, Tell them that you knew him when. Say something about the
Well,
guy.
Doug, I knew at school when Doug was 14 and I was 16. We did school plays together. We did little films together, some of which are on tape, rather on DVD. We did plays which I wrote. Then, of course, we all together made theatre pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
Doug was offered the role of the removal man, played by Oliver Parker, or Pinhead, on the basis that Pinhead would be a pain in the ass to play because you'd have to do all this makeup stuff. And Doug and Ollie, I think, debated it back and forth as to who was going to do...
Really?
Yeah, who
Huh.
was going to do it. I think they decided Doug sort of took the short straw because it was a makeup gag, you know, and he was
Right.
going to be buried in makeup. It was going to be a pain in the ass to do it. And then, of course, he ends up sort of taking the post around the reviews.
Right. And entering the movie
pantheon.
monster pantheon, yeah.
Oh, this is a nice moment because you're recognizing for a moment
Right.
that this is
not my dad.
This is not your father. Nice simple gag there, the tearing.
So much for the cat and mouse shit.
Not me!
This is a very unforgiving movie, it strikes me, looking at it now.
Well, you have the whole frog and the scorpion thing with him, too, because he
truly-
supposedly loved her,
You
but he
truly do.
can't help himself.
Truly, absolutely. Claire hated that. Because she looked so glamorous for the movie. And then, you know, she was, oh, man. And now we've got a very simple haunted house.
Where are you, beautiful?
The girl is upstairs and Uncle Frank with flick knife is coming to find her. And we have a couple of boos. We have a couple of those moments.
Yeah. Opening that cupboard.
There are two, I think. One, the first one is the stronger one, which we're about to see, and the second one is the maggot scene. Sorry. But what's great about this is that we're really reduced to the simplest of dynamics now, a pursuit in a sort of haunted house. Here we go. Blue. And what's great there is that, of
Cameo
course,
by Jesus.
it's Christ jumping out at
Of course
you.
it is.
Yeah.
And I have to put him away.
Put him away. Be quiet. Shh.
Jesus, shh. Silent savior.
Say nothing, Savior. We're in this together. And then we had this tiny little space, and you recall that I threw the
Maggots.
the maggots down your cleavage.
Yes, but again, I was sprayed down to be sweaty, so they stuck. They were
They
in my
did.
bra. They were in my jeans.
If it's any comfort, they found their way down my underwear as well. So I had sort of, you know,
And the investors were beaming because it was such a tiny space, and there they were. We kept having to move them out of my eye line, and they were just so happy to be witnessing this.
This is pushing the heroine to the very limits, and I really liked that. I really liked the. Here we go.
Well, I'm not brave. I don't want to be courageous, and I don't want to be there, which is really nice, I think.
Yeah, and you look sick and unhappy, and you're not one of those beautifully primed.
Like I took a risk and didn't wear mascara
Right.
in the movie of the week, prison movie. Yeah.
Right. The Farrah Fawcett Major's dramatic classes don't wear mascara.
Really stretching.
Really stretching.
Although she actually went the other direction, didn't she?
What, too much mascara?
No, in the whole extremity.
Oh, I see. Yes.
A saucer of milk for Miss Laurence?
No, I was actually defending. Rare.
This is one of those moments when the audience, I actually heard an audience on 42nd Street just yelling, "Get out of there, bitch."
Yep.
They were so unforgiving of you.
I know. It's very indulgent to just sit there and cry.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I'm from a middle-class family.
And then this is, I love this. You're driven by your uncle in your father's skin to slip over the body of
The
your
entrails
own
of my father.
Right.
Daddy.
No, don't mourn him. He was dead long before.
After a while, you couldn't do continuity with any other wardrobe, so I had to wear that T-shirt for 3 weeks in a row every single day.
You think we didn't know that?
I know. Why bathe? Yeah.
Right.
What the hell is that?
This is a great moment for the plotting. It was one of those moments where it really plays. He admits to his own undoing.
Because you're right, as you say, he forces Kirsty back over the entrails of her own father, but he's chasing her into the room where something worse is waiting for
him.
Yeah. And how?
And how? There's a scene coming up which is I am asked about more than anything. There's a line coming up which I'm asked about more than anything, which is Andy's final lines, Jesus wept. Andy's choice, a brilliant choice, shortest chapter in the Bible. I had him saying something much coarser like fuck off, actually, and it was just, really subtle stuff like that. Yeah. And Andy had said, no, I want something different, and he delivers these lines, or these words, hooked up. And it was the most uncomfortable thing for the man. Because he was hooked up there for hours.
Yeah, I know.
And he had a board which he lay back upon, do you recall?
Yes, I remember that.
But the poor man.
Something out of...
We could never get away with this stuff now, I think.
And see, Pinhead loves me. He lets me go.
I think the great thing is that he's indifferent to you. I think that's the cool thing.
That's not what she needs to hear, Clive.
No, I have a whole...
whole other thing going on.
Yeah, because he lets you go in the second one as well. I think there's the seeds of a romance there, for sure.
You see, by the time we got to the
it's the one
second
on the spine.
Yeah, that does it. But here he was hooked up and he could not move because all those chains were in
That's
him.
where his being a real pro came in, though, because I remember he was amazing.
He was.
Jesus wept.
Oh, man.
Now, that was a longer shot. It was a much longer shot. Body pieces went every place. Again, well, perhaps that one in another life I would have let run slightly longer. It looks slightly truncated. I don't know where the hell we would find that material now.
Right. But I'm surprised that they made you trim the explosion, which at least is an end to prolonged human suffering, and kept the shot before it.
Well, we had to cut a lot of the licking of the lips.
Yeah, right.
But
but that's not suffering. That's enjoyment.
Right.
So
well,
you
that's
can't
what
have
they didn't
enjoyment.
like.
That's the thrusting too.
Like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember, we added that at the end, being able to pry from her fingers.
Yeah. And here we were shooting against time. Do you remember we had so little time? And we had Doug on that teeter board. Do you remember? And it was like a seesaw.
Yeah.
And he was standing on one side, and Selwyn Roberts, who was a massive man, was on the other end.
Oh, my God.
Lifting Doug up into the air.
No, don't do that.
Go to hell!
Takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
It does. Here's another place with the destruction of a house where if we'd had more money. I hand animated that stuff with a very nice Greek gentleman at his home one Sunday. Yeah, we had no money left, and New Line refused to pay for any of it. So I said, well, what if we just hand animate the stuff? So we both of us got very drunk on Greek beer, and I hand painted all the
I like that.
Ah,
It was very Amateurville.
I didn't know that. But it doesn't look that way.
No, I guess it looks okay.
Oh, the bride.
Yes. We got this in one. Vision said we'd never get it, that it would never fall directly on him. And we got it in one. He said, you lucky bastard. And then we couldn't have the box hit him, do you remember? Because we only had one mask left at that time. And so it all had to be fake.
And the poor thing couldn't see
and he
to back
couldn't
up.
see. Don't see
Yeah,
a
you
damn
trusted
thing.
me.
Yeah, well, he trusted you, which is even more important. And then Simon Bamford, who had played with us in The Dog Company, done a lot of theatre stuff in the Butterball.
He's slender, too, in real life, isn't he?
Tiny little guy. He plays in Nightbreed, one of the most attractive of the Nightbreed, sweet character whose name completely escapes me right now, with a little dog.
I like that my boyfriend does nothing.
Your boyfriend is completely useless throughout this entire movie.
But he's there for you.
He is.
But that was absolutely, as they say, a choice. I mean,
I love that.
I love the idea that you were the proactive one, and this guy is dinky but sort of useless.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's one of the reasons why people like the movie, is because you are so proactive.
Have some balls.
Yeah, so to speak. We had so little footage here, and
This was actually fun, though, because you were just shouting out, like, what to do.
Yes.
Give him a right, left,
Right.
snarl, scream.
And shooting at night, do you remember?
Yeah.
And that wind machine,
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
filled with dirt. That was somewhat crude, huh? I don't think Robert, who played your boyfriend, had a whole heap of a great time making the pictures.
He was miserable.
He was.
Yeah.
I think he felt as though that he was not being given enough to do, and that was the point, and there wasn't much to do about it. He wasn't playing the conventional hero. He
Right.
wasn't defending you. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. He was your foil. I wore that shirt that he's wearing for years after that. I liked it so much we cleaned it off. And
I loved
wore it.
doing that. This is like one of the only times I'm actually somewhat clean.
We shot this on that wasteland, right?
Yes.
And but first we didn't have any money to set fire to the house, so we did it symbolically.
Right.
Yes. Which isn't so terrible an idea, actually. I mean, if this had been a Corman film, we would have had
A little model.
or actually footage which you'd seen 12 times before of
Or like a real church in Russia that they just decided
right,
to
to burn down.
Yeah.
This I like, though. I like the burning chair in the bottom left.
What's left of something domestic.
Yes. Oh, is this the house? You know, it never figured to me before that this is the house. Is this supposed to be the ruins of the house?
I don't know.
You would know that, Clive.
Well, you're asking the wrong person, because I've always...
It was always called Wasteland, so
It was
I
just a
didn't know.
wasteland scene,
Right.
and there's a flyover behind.
I don't think we lived
So
so
it-
close to the industrial.
I don't think so.
So it's not meant to be.
I don't think so. I think it's just a sort of, it's interesting.
And
yeah.
again, this is not you.
No, this isn't me, but this was a gag. It's a good
Nor
gag.
is it Paul McCartney. What?
It was the stepping into the fire. It was a good strong gag, a good punchline. The total burn on the guy there And then Bob Keane producing this monster for, I think, something like 700 pounds or something.
The squealing pterodactyl.
This, because we had no money left.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And we needed it for a couple of shots, and he gave us something
This looks like a really
wonderful.
bad Gap ad.
It does. Yes, it does. Yeah, exactly. And then the nice full circularity.
With the
Very
cockroach,
nice.
too.
And you
Yeah.
know, I never realized we don't see the creature fly away. I mean, that's a
No.
nice trick. We get the POV flight instead.
We
but,
couldn't show because it didn't do anything.
Right. but my memory of it is that the creature flaps its wings and flies
That's
away.
good. And then there's a
Yeah.
symbolic little version of the beast painted on the wall. Kenneth Nelson, there he is. Good guy. A good guy. And their lead Cenobite, Doug
Right.
Bradley.
Wow.
Yeah, Pinhead was a nickname,
was a
right?
nickname.
It's stuck.
It was not even a nickname I liked, actually.
Right.
Pinhead seemed to me to be a very unflattering nickname for a...
Kind of docile.
Right.
Kind of.
Yes. Claire St. John, I think, the production coordinator, was... Am I right in thinking she was the very sweet lady who offered the alternative title to this movie? Is that right? At one point, New Line said, "We don't really like the title Hellraiser.
Uh-huh.
We think it's rather, we just don't like it."
They thought it was beneath their usual standard.
Well, I think they also thought it was sort of something that wouldn't play in the South, and there were all this stuff.
Right.
And so I said, okay, if anybody can come up with a better title, we'll use it. And one of the very, very English, very proper ladies on the set said, "Oh, I think it should be called What a Woman Will Do for a Good Fuck."
Well, that's certainly the log line of the movie, if not the title. And your alternative title was Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave.
That's right. Well, that was my working title.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Equally accurate.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Say goodbye to your listeners.
Thanks, and thank you for listening to this this mixture of memory and nostalgia. Actually, it's made me want to go and make another cheap movie.
You guys didn't need much prompting at all. Your memories were very entertaining and very informative.
Thank you. Goodbye, and thank you very much.
Thank you all. Hope you had fun.
Bye.